Hello, welcome to Unit 1, Day 12. Today we're going to be talking about percentiles. Specifically, we're going to look at how to find a percentile in an ordered data set. So we say the kth percentile. So for instance, if I wanted to find the 20th percentile or the 30th percentile in an ordered data set, we're going to learn how to do that. We're also going to learn how to find the percentile of a given data value. So for instance, if you said, hey, I got a 72% on my test, what percentile does that relate to in relation to the rest of your peers, right? So we're going to learn how to figure out what percentile a particular data value is. And then we're going to also look at interpreting the percentiles into words, right? So when we talk about percentiles, how do we accurately portray a percentile if we were writing about it, let's say in a report or a paper, all right? So we're going to start off by finding the kth percentile here. So this is the step-by-step process for doing it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to order the data from least to greatest, right? So we've got a data set down here that I have already ordered for you. So these are the ages for Academy Award-winning Best Actors in order from smallest to largest. So we got somebody who is 18 that won the Academy Award all the way up to 80, okay? And we're going to calculate this thing called a locator. So this is the formula for the locator where K represents the percentile it is that you're trying to find, and N represents our sample size, right? So for our problem down here, that's going to be 30. So once we know what L is, we look at two different scenarios. So if L is a decimal, we're going to round up to the next number and use the number in that position. If L is a whole number, then we're going to use that number and the next number and find the average of the two, all right? So let's look at an example. It's a lot easier to make sense of these kinds of instructions once we see an example. So this one specifically says that we want to find the 30th percentile. Okay, so what that means is if I'm looking at my formula here, that means that K equals 30, right? Because we want the 30th percentile. And we know that N is also going to be 30 because they tell us that there are 30 pieces of data in this ordered set. All right, so I'm going to say 30 over 100. And I'm going to take whatever the result of that is, and I'm going to multiply it by 30, right? Because that is what N is. So 30 over 100 is 0.3 times 30, which is 9, right? So the data piece that is in position 9, right, whatever the 9th piece of data is, this is going to be where we're going to find our percentile. All right, so I'm going to start here. This is piece 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is the 9th piece. And since this turned out to be a whole number, we're going to be looking at option 4 here. And it says use that number and the next number, so 31 and 33, and we want to find the average of those two. So I'm going to take 31 plus 33, and I'm going to divide by 2, and that's going to get us 32. So we would say percentile 30 equals 32. So if you want to be in the 30th percentile, you would need to be 32 years old when you win your Academy Award. Okay. So let's try it again. This time we're going to do the 83rd percentile. And remember what a percentile does is it chops up your data into two groups, right? So there's the 83%, right? The bottom 83% and the top 17%, right? So it divides it into like a top and a bottom group. All right, well, let's give this one a try and see what we get. So we've got K equals 83. We've got N equals 30 still since we're dealing with the same data set. So we're going to do 83 over 100 times 30. Okay, so we get 0.83 times 30, and that's going to get us 24.9. Okay, so in this case, we got a decimal, so I'm going to go to option 3. It says if L is a decimal, round up, right, to the next number. So we're always going to round up no matter what this is. If this was 0.01, we would round up anyways, okay? So we're going to round up to 25, okay? So the 25th piece of data is going to be our 83rd percentile. So I'm going to count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is the 25th piece of data in order, right, that is in our data set here. So we would say the 83rd percentile equals 72. So if I were 72 years old when I won the Academy Award, that means I was older than 83% of all the people who won an Academy Award and younger than 17% of the people who won an Academy Award. So that's kind of what we just found there. All right, now let's go the other direction. Let's say I give you an age, right? So let's say I told you I was 58 and I want to know what percentile that is. That's what this is going to do for us here. All right, so different process. So we want to make sure that we read through it, and then I'll demonstrate how to do that for you. All right, so there's a formula that we see down here. We're going to do this calculation, and up here I kind of explain what each piece of the formula is. All right, so this X value that we see in our formula here, that is the number of data values counting from the bottom of the data list up to but not including the data value for which you want to find the percentile. Okay, so for instance, if I'm looking at 58, 58 is located here. I would count up how many pieces of data came before the 58. That would be X. All right, and then Y is the number of times the data value repeats itself, right? So it's the number of data values equal to the data value that you're given. So if I'm looking at this one, 58 only occurs once, right? So that means Y would be 1. Right, N is the total number of data, so this should say 30. There should be 30 ages, so there's 30 pieces of data, and then we calculate this thing and we round to the nearest integer. So we could round up or round down with this process. Right, and again, this is easier understood from an example, so let's just do one here. So we're looking at the percentile for 58. Here's 58 in my data, so I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. There's 18 ages that come before 58, so X is 18. Now 58 only occurs once in the data set, so there's no repeats of 58, so Y is going to be 1, and N is going to be 30, right, because there's 30 total pieces of data. Now I'm going to set up my formula just like it says here. So we're going to have 18 plus 0.5 times 1 all over 30. Okay, so there's my calculation, and then I'm going to take whatever the result of that is and I'm going to multiply it by 100. Okay, so let's see what we get. I grab my calculator and do all this. We should get 61.67. All right, so this is the number that comes out, and then it says to round to the nearest integer, so this is 0.6, so this is going to round up to 62. So 58 is percentile 62. Okay, so if you told me that you were an Academy Award winner who was 58 years old, I would know that you are in the 62nd percentile. Right? In other words, you were older than 62% of all of the other Academy Award winning best actors out there. Right. Let's do it one more time, this time for percentile for a 37-year-old actor. All right, so we would go to 37 and count up the number of data pieces. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we're going to say X equals 11 this time. Y is 1 because 37 only occurs once. And then N is still 30. So we're going to have 11 plus 0.5 times 1 all over 30 times 100. And we should get 38.33. So this one's going to round down to 38. So we would say percentile 38 equals 37. So if you told me you were a 37-year-old best Academy Award winning actor, then I would know that you are older than 38% of all of the other Academy Award winning best actors. All right, so let's do a little bit of interpretation. You've kind of heard me like speaking some of the interpretations when we did the percentiles up here. So this time we don't actually have to calculate any of the percentiles here. We're just going to actually interpret it using words. Okay, so let me get my thing, see if I can type. All right, so it says on a timed math test, the first quartile. And that's kind of important. They're using some words here, right? Quartile is the same thing as the 25th percentile. All right, so remember that equivalency. We talked about that when we did the 5-number summary. And I said the first quartile for the time it took to finish the exam was 35 minutes. All right, so what does that mean if I want to interpret that? Okay, so what this would mean is that 25% of students finish the test in 35 minutes or less. Okay, so when we write that summary statement, we want to include the 35, right? So any time of 35 minutes or less, 25% students finished in that range. Okay, the other way that we could write this, we could also write about the other 75%. So we could say an equivalent statement would be 75% of students finish the test in 35 minutes or more. Okay, so 75% of the students took 35 minutes or longer to finish the test. All right, so both of those statements are equivalent and are both accepted ways of describing the 25th percentile or interpreting what that 25th percentile means. All right, let's try it again here. So we have on a 20-question math test, the 70th percentile for the number of correct answers was 16. Okay, so let's see if we can interpret that. So you have to, again, think what a percentile does is it divides the data. It divides the data into two groups. If we're at the 70th percentile, there's the bottom 70% and the top 30%, and you can write your interpretation based on either one. So if we go with the 70%, we can say 70% of students answered 16 or less questions correctly. Okay, so 70% of them got 16 or less correct. Okay, or we could write this from the perspective of the 30%, right? The top 30%. So we can say 30% of students answered 16 or more correctly. Okay, so either one of those would work just fine. And you start to see like what a percentile really does. It just kind of chops your data into two groups, right? Based on whatever number they give you. So, you know, if it were the second quartile or the median, right? The 50%, that means 50% is on one side of this number, 50% is on the other side of this number. So let's do one more. So we've got another one here. This one is the 30th percentile. So at this community college, it was found that the 30th percentile of credit units that students are enrolled for is 7 units, all right? So we're gonna say 30% of students are enrolled in 7 units or more. I'm sorry, 7 units or less. Right, because the 30th percentile, right, there's the bottom 30 and the top 70, okay? And if they're enrolled in 7 units, then we would say 30% of students are enrolled in 7 units or less, or we could say 70% of students are enrolled in 7 units or more. Okay. All right, guys. So I hope that helps out. You're going to have a couple questions in my open math that are going to ask you to write interpretation statements. You really only need to give me one of these and just make sure that they are correct. So you are going to include the number that they give you. So you don't want to say strictly less than 7. You don't want to say strictly more than 7. You want to say 7 or less, 7 or more, so that 7 gets included in the interpretation. All right. All right, guys. Well, that's it for this video. Let me know if you have any questions in the Zoom chat. I'd love to help you out. Otherwise, have a great day.